Okay, hi everyone. We are so excited to have you here today. My name is Maddie Watt and I lead the Hive Think Tank's webinar series. Thank you for joining us today from around the world. We've got an amazing panel lined up for you guys today. We're going to be discussing, does COVID mark the end of physical retail as we know it? And before we get started, I want to go over the chat rules, okay? So please be respectful in the chat and refrain from product plugs. This is not the place to be recruiting for your startup. And we appreciate you understanding and respecting our rules. We love questions. We want you guys to ask these guys all the heart-burning questions. So go ahead. When you do ask a question, please use the Q&A function to ask our presenters what you want to know. The Q&A button is located at the bottom of your screen, and you can go ahead and upvote questions that you want to see answered. Please refrain from using the chat to ask questions. We really appreciate if you hit the Q&A button and ask your question there. It's a lot easier for our moderator, Joe, to go ahead and then see your questions. We don't want it to get lost in the chat. Plus, then you guys can upload different questions that you want to see answered. This session is being recorded and we will have it for you guys on our YouTube page. I will go ahead and drop the link for our YouTube page in the chat, and then after this session tomorrow, you're going to get an automated email that has the link to the YouTube. We love when people follow along or contribute on social media. Please go ahead and tag us at Hive Data or use the hashtag Hive Data. And at the end of the event, I'm going to send out a brief event survey. If you have just 2 minutes, it's only 5 questions. It helps us design these events specifically tailored to what you want to see in your needs. So we really appreciate if you take the time to do that. And without further ado, let me just explain what the Hive Think Tank does, and then I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to TM Ravi, the Hive's founder and managing director. So the Hive Think Tank is an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, corporations, and thought leaders. Right now, we're bringing you virtual events basically every week. So if you've been with us for a while, if this is not your first event with us, you know that we're constantly bringing you guys the latest and the greatest in all things AI. And we're really excited to be having this amazing future of retail panel today. And if you want to join our Hive Think Tank, you can join us on Meetup. I will drop the link there, and you can find out what other ideas we have in the space through our Medium blog website, which I will also drop. Next page, please. Thank you, Ravi. And just a special thanks really quick to our sponsors. If you are interested in working with us or becoming a sponsor of the Hive Think Tank, please go ahead and contact me. My email is right there, maddie@hivedata.com. And then I'm just going to let you guys know these events that we have coming up. We rescheduled our contact tracing event, and it was originally in the beginning of June. Now it's going to be here on July 30th. It's going to be super, super, super interesting. So if you want to find out more about contact tracing and privacy and how that exists in the world of COVID, please go ahead and join us. I will share that link with you to register. And finally, our next event we just published. This is going to be all about testing and whether or not regulatory entities such as the CDC and the FDA, if they are actually helping or a hindrance to getting COVID tests out. So this is going to be a very provocative and interesting conversation. So please go ahead and join us. I'll go ahead and drop that link as well. And now, Ravi.
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you, Database, for joining us today. So just a brief introduction to the Hive. The Hive is a venture studio, so it's much like a venture capital entity, except that we have a whole kind of operating entity as part of the Hive. And so we are focused on leveraging data and data-related techniques, AI, to transform the enterprise. And so if you see sort of our focus is leveraging the technologies that you see on the bottom for the industries, the enterprise, and a few key kind of verticals that you see on the top. Our focus is thematic. So we think the big thoughts on how AI is going to transform applications and business processes, security and privacy, the industrial sector, and so forth, and then see what's possible in the next 3 to 5 years. And here is a kind of a set of some of the active companies that we are working with, that we have co-created at the Hive. And last year, many of you followed. We participated in the IPO of Pinterest. A number of our companies have been acquired. We are just beginning the Hive 4. And as many of you already know, at any time, we have two benches in the Hive, a bench of company concepts that we are developing and a bench of entrepreneurs who can be founders and employees of our companies. So if you are interested in being a founder or an employee, please reach out to us and we'd love to engage with you. And an example of the kind of company concepts that we have for the Hive 4 include a cloud MRP for resilient supply chains, healthy spaces, healthy buildings, very, very kind of relevant to these times, remote and automated field services where you can kind of reduce the number of truck rolls that have to go out there. Today we use UCaaS tools like Slack and Zoom and so forth, but it's really used as a communication tool. And so we are thinking about how to tie it into workflows and business processes in a seamless way. And so there's a set of examples of what we are doing. If you're going to be on Twitter today, use the hashtag HiveData. And with that, I'd like to introduce Joseph Sartre, who is the managing partner at Interlace Ventures, has a lot of experience with consumer goods and retail. And we were just chatting, he also succeeded in selling water to the Chinese. Welcome, Joseph.
Thanks, Javi. Thanks, Javi, for this introduction. So onto our topic today. So I'm Joseph, managing partner and founder of Interlace Ventures. Interlace Ventures invest in very early stage companies using technology for commerce and retail. We've been doing that for 4 years with my partner, Vincent, who's based in Silicon Valley. I'm based in my shoe apartment in New York. So there's, been trying to go through this whole thing together. I'm very lucky to have with me Ghadi, who's the CMO and CDO of Westfield's Unibail-Rodamco. He will introduce himself a little bit. And Vibhu, the CEO and founder of Beta. Beta is one of our portfolio companies. We're very excited about what they're doing and really excited about where physical retail, where they are taking physical retail. Before we get into the overall discussion, perhaps, and Ghadi, you can start, you can explain a little bit who you are, your experience, your company and your role, and then we'll go on to Vibhu.
Absolutely, thanks, Joe. Hello, everyone. So I'm Ghadi, as Joe said, CMO for the US and Chief Digital Officer for Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield. For those of you who have been to Europe, the original company is Unibail-Rodamco. It's been operating for 40 or 50 years in the malls and shopping center space in Europe. And 2 years ago, we've acquired Westfield, an Australian-based company that had operations in the US and in the UK. So I've been officing out of LA for the past 2 years. We have 30 malls across the country. We have another 60 malls in Europe, and this is our core business. Personally, I've been working in France for the past 15 years before moving to the US in retail and e-commerce mainly. And it has led me kind of naturally to the mall industry, which is just a physical representation of what an online marketplace can be. That's it, Joe. You want to continue? Just pass it on to Vibhu for introduction.
Yeah, maybe let's pass it on to Vibhu. I think your computer's charging now, Vibhu, so maybe a good time to jump in and mute off yourself.
Hey, yeah, sorry, I didn't realize my computer was about 1% away from dying. So, yeah, I'm Vibhu. So I founded Beta 5 years ago with a couple of colleagues. We all had come out of Nest, the smart home company. And I've been a kind of software entrepreneur and software engineer for my entire career. So if you don't know Beta, we are a network of 20 1 locations in the US, 1 in Dubai, 2 in Tokyo, launching pretty soon. And we take some of the best products out of the box and show people how they work. And the entire concept of our store is really about demonstrations and getting great products into the hands of people. We are probably most well known as the pioneers of a retail category called retail as a service, which is a new business model for retail where brands rent or subscribe to space inside of stores and pay for their space instead of the retailer buying their product at wholesale. And we also are probably the most data equipped retailer on planet Earth. Our stores are not just places for people to try products, but they're also places where our brands can help understand how to make their products better and how to build a better retail experience using machine vision and a combination of our beta testers, which are our retail staff as well. We've been doing this for 5 years. We've raised almost $100 million of venture capital. We're around 150 people now, and in the US, and that's all I can think of. So yeah, that's beta.
Thanks, Vibhu and Ghadi. And so for the audience, we're gonna break it down into 2 main themes. The first theme is what happened with the closures and reopenings, both at Westfield and at Vibhu, and give sort of a candid picture of what happened during COVID and what's starting to happen as things started reopening and then started pausing a little bit, and get some of that pulse from them. I encourage you to ask questions through this first theme, and we'll try to answer them as that first theme goes. And then the second theme is really hone into what COVID means for the physical store and its business model. And I think both Ghadi and Vibhu have really, when we were doing the preparation, a really interesting point and deep points about it. And so we'll be excited to hear a little bit about this. Maybe starting with Ghadi, you can share a little bit with us in an accelerated film fashion, how you've been responding to the COVID crisis. What happened to your store and malls? Can you share the reopening processes, the traffic evolution, and the measures that you've put in place? And perhaps it'd be interesting to share what happened in the US and what happened in Europe, and sort of make this difference.
Absolutely. Listen, Joe, it's been quite a ride. I think it's the first time in 100 years that the world had seen such a crisis, and it's probably the first time in our history where probably 95% to sometimes 100% of our operations were shut down. So just to retrace a little bit the recent history in the last 3 months, we've closed most of our operations around March. It started in Europe and then came to the US as public authorities were closing what they call non-essential commerce. And as a very little subset, a small subset of our operations were still running, linked to grocery stores, mainly pharmacies and other points of sales that were considered essential. So it has been quite a shock for, I think, the organization, just as it has been for most of the market. And we had to adapt to it. So obviously helping those closures, communicating to customers, and also trying to think about 2 things. First, how do we engage with our customers, retailers, and communities during the closure? And second, how do we prepare best for reopening, and under what circumstances and in what mindset will people be once public authorities and health departments authorize us to reopen? So what we have done during closure is essentially provide information first to customers, explaining who was open, what was open, and what services were available. Second, try to keep that engagement going on, and the only way we had to do that was through digital channels, obviously, because our main media, which is the mall, was not available. So we've doubled down on digital communications. We've used social media quite a lot. We've also started to think how to use our mall's capabilities and resources to do good for the community. So we launched a program called Westfield Cares, which was just about giving back to the community, helping them by opening our spaces, by given donations, by assisting frontline workers, by highlighting who were the local and community heroes that were doing good for the community. And we had an amazing number of initiatives all across the country through our centers and employees to do that. And then from a reopening plan standpoint, we basically had three focuses. First one, obviously very operational around health and safety. What are the new protocols to be put in place? We've added sanitization stations all over the centers. We've created a lot of materials to explain what we were expecting from people, but what we are also doing to keep them safe. Added a lot of collateral and creative and communication on site to encourage social distancing. Had to declutter the common areas, space out the seating, etc., etc. So it was a lot of operational and groundwork first to make our centers compliant from a health standpoint. Second, obviously, helping our retailers and tenants navigate through this. It was a lot. Some of them were looking for what were their latest health guidelines or opening dates or forecasted opening dates. Others wanted to have access to their store to start working on their merchandising, spacing their stores as well, ordering equipment and supplies, so on and so forth. And obviously, some were also questioning what local authorities were doing in terms of help, maybe, or financial assistance. And we tried to gather all this information and communicate back to tenants to make sure that we were helping them navigate through the crisis and helping them giving some clarity. We've also partnered with a couple of companies. We had a deal with Shopify. We had a deal with Winston, which is a third-party staff provider, just to help our tenants, saying if you have staff requirements upon opening, if you want to set up a quick e-commerce platform to help your sales ramp up faster, that we can help you and we can assist you doing that. And we've obviously, and this is my third part, try to think about services, new services that can help improve our tenants' business, but also serve customers in a better way. I think if you step back a little, malls and especially Westfield have done great in the past to make shopping as enjoyable as possible. But I think that we probably had a little bit of room for maneuver in the convenience aspect, making it easy, quick, and this is what e-commerce has brought to the retail market, but what maybe physical commerce had not shifted entirely. So first thing we've done is promote deliveries, food deliveries, product deliveries out of the mall, out of the shop, and we'll probably cover that later in the conversation. But we've seen a lot of shops transforming into mini warehouses during that crisis. Also put in place some services like curbside pickup, and we've innovated through a series of new digitally powered services. So we're communicating capacity and live capacity and occupancy to our customers before they come to the mall. Put in place an appointment booking feature, a virtual waitlist feature for the stores, etc. Just to finish up, Joe, difference between Europe and US. Listen, ramp up in Europe has been a little bit, so they've opened sooner than we did. In the US, each state had its own reality and its own tempo, let's say. Not everybody has started at the same time, although almost everyone has closed at the same time. And what we've seen in Europe is super encouraging, because as traffic was probably down 50 to 60% upon reopening, the ramp up has been pretty fast. It's partly due to the fact that most European centers are anchored by grocers and food tenants, which have kept some good level of visitation even through the crisis, but also linked to the fact that people were just awaiting their favorite mall to open again, because people wanted to go out, people wanted to shop, probably socialize a little bit, have a good meal, and get back to normal life. So we're not there yet, but the ramp up is super positive, and we're growing double digits week over week. So
are you able to share some numbers of where you stand versus pre-crisis in terms of traffic?
Absolutely. Listen, it's been a bit of the same for the entire mall industry, and our centers haven't been different. I think that most centers have reopened with sometimes 30, 40, 50% of their tenants open on day one. And the main reason for which people visit the mall is obviously the list of open tenants, or the list of tenants in general and open tenants afterwards. So as you were having 40 to 50% of the open tenants, you were expecting 40 or 50% of your traffic to be there, and those are the numbers with which we've started. But as more people were getting confident of coming back, and as more tenants and retailers were opening, we've had some malls that are as close as 7 or 8% down compared to their pre-COVID levels. Some that are still getting there. So it's not bad. It's just taking a little bit more time that I would have loved, but obviously some people are less worried about coming back to public spaces, and some need a little bit more time.
Is that something you share, Vibhu, on your end from your traffic? And I think it'd be interesting also to see how Dubai and Japan are starting to look, and specifically, I think you've always tried to be a little bit provocative through the old generations of retailers, and maybe share a little bit what you've done with Shop Safely, to understand, what was the purpose behind it, and what was the response.
Sure. Yeah. So I had when we first opened our Texas stores, which were the first locations we were able to legally open. I think I want to say early May. So they've been open for maybe mid-May, month and a half or so.
And you personally opened it, if I remember correctly.
I happened to be in Houston. Yeah, I didn't personally open, but I did visit a day or two after we opened. Every state here is a little different in the U.S. than they have different culture and different appetite for shopping. So what I've seen so far, and we've gotten most of our stores open by now. I think we're just missing Denver and New York City, which there's still no opening date for enclosed malls in New York City right now. I think the recovery has been different across these markets, but we've only had a couple of weeks of data for most of our stores. We were seeing also double-digit weekly growth in traffic, but if you have 10 people coming in the store, double-digit growth can be 11 people the next week. So it's not this is not super exciting yet. The most interesting thing we saw was that transaction volume was coming back pretty quickly. So we had about half a month of almost all of our stores in June, and keep in mind, New York City is our best market by far. Our stores at Hudson Yards are just outsized performers. So I think we saw about 40% of GMV being restored, and I would have expected that. I think on a full month basis, that'll be 60-70% of transaction volume will be restored, but traffic will be off by probably holistically 90-ish%. So people are not coming in for the same reasons they used to come in. I think people used to come and hang out and have fun in our stores, and now people are mainly coming with a mission. So I think there's good and bad. Our business model is really built on that discovery aspect. We need people to come in and have a great experience and have fun. The supply chain side of our business has been the thing that we really didn't build our stores for, but we're getting kind of better at right now. We're happy to have our stores open. And you mentioned Shop Safely. Even recently we've had to make some decisions around whether we need to reclose stores in Texas, for example. But we talked through with our leadership team and our store managers, and to be quite frank, I think our stores are the most safe environments in the world outside of your home, pretty much, maybe even safer than your home. You're almost always going to be assisted by a retail associate, a beta tester, one-to-one, or one family to an associate. We require masks. Wear a mask, please. And we also keep track of everything that a group of customers interacting with in the store. And we do a full sanitation in between customer visits. So it's, we've certainly, and this took months to figure out how to do this correctly. There wasn't really a playbook for how to open a store safely, and it really depended on the category and sort of what kind of merchandise you had and what your store looked like. So we spent some of our time while stores were closed doing tons and tons of research, and we ended up publishing that research to shopsafely.co. And basically it's a list of the top couple hundred retailers in the country by sales volume, I would say this is 70% or so of all of the transactions in the country, outside of like automobile and things like that. And we've documented every single one of their safety procedures that they publish online. Most retailers are doing somewhere between 15 and 20 of the same things. And best in class today are, extremely rigorous. I would say like the standards we have at Beta are a little bit farther beyond that, but that's because we have small stores. It's a little hard to do one-to-one. If you're operating an entire grocery store, you're not gonna have one person in there at a time. It doesn't really make sense.
Right. Right.
But people should feel safe shopping in our stores, and certainly we would love to welcome people back if they're interested to check out some new stuff.
Thanks for that. We have a few questions already coming in, and I think one of them is starting to tie into most of them are starting to tie into the next topic, and I think it's a good time to jump. But maybe to continue, Vibhu, is how have you adjusted your online strategy during closures to really stay connected with the customers, to your customers, right, to your visitors, and either encourage them to come to your stores in the future or keep them online?
Right. Well, so Beta was not really an e-commerce company, and which is a strange thing to say for a company started in 2015 in retail. But we really had built a strategy around physical, and our entire mission was to provide this infrastructure layer in the physical world for all these new brands coming to market. And we ended up adding kind of e-commerce 2 years after we launched our first store as a companion to our store experience. So if you didn't know or couldn't remember the name of the product you saw in the store, or sometimes we were the best place to sort of pick up the pieces after your visit. Pretty quickly after, I would say the first couple of weeks of March after we closed were pretty bad. I think there's a lot of uncertainty and people were holding back their dollars. But coming into April and May, we started seeing just really strong organic growth on our online channels. And I think June and May are both 3x-ish year over year in terms of comp GMV. And we've really amped up the level of communications to customers, doing a lot more emails. But there's two things that I think have been really fun. One is live streaming. I think actually there's one starting right now. Please don't leave this stream, but if you go to instagram.com/beta, you can see we're doing a live demo with the founder of a company called Last Call Recovery. So they're thanks, Caroline. So they're a beverage. I believe you take it before you go to sleep after you had some wine or you had some drinks. It helps you feel refreshed in the morning. And so we've been hosting these a couple times a week. In fact, it's going so well, and we're so excited about it that we're trying to figure out how we can live stream all day, every single day. I think that's part of the direction that our company is going right now. And it's a really nice way to have some of the benefits of coming into a beta store without having to step foot in. We've also been hosting virtual appointments. So we've took a lot of our beta testers or beta store managers out of furlough and asked them to host customers who wanted to learn about products virtually. Some of them had the products on site in their homes. Now, if you request a virtual appointment, you'll get on a video call with someone in one of our stores so they can actually demonstrate the products to you. It's a very personal one-to-one experience. We've like Westfield, have also been doing appointment booking for a long time. So we've been hosting pre-booked appointments for at least 1.5 years now, and that's a really important thing for customers to do before they come to a beta store. Because if you come, there's no guarantee that you're going to have a chance to come in at that moment if there's a customer already in. So you do want to pre-book your visit and tell us also what you're interested in, so we can give you a really private experience with those products. That's a couple of things. I mean, I think it's, even as a startup, we can be a little slow sometimes, and it takes time to adjust your strategy. And like I said, we've spent 5 years building stores, and we can't all at once have an e-commerce business that replaces physical. Like we have a lot of hard costs associated that we can't get out of. We have a ton of leases. We have, people, like this is very expensive to run our stores, and our e-commerce site would have to be close to 20 times bigger than it is today to just pay for the leases we have. So that's not going to happen during this time, but we're making steps to insulate ourselves in the future a bit better from such a thing.
Cool, thanks. So maybe then let's move on, I think, to the harder topic in the next 25 minutes, which is what's going to be the business model of the physical store. And I'm going to have a really blunt and direct question, but without or with low traffic, how does each of your business model work? And maybe we can start with Ghadi, and you can share what the expectations of brands. What expectations brands have now. And I think you told me once, if you left us just thinking of we provide square footage, that's actually totally wrong now. We do much more. So perhaps share a little bit around that.
Yeah, sure. So listen, it was interesting to hear Vibhu speaking about the mission-driven customer. Maybe a couple of stats first to start. During the closure, we've had some tenants which were able to roughly do 50% of their usual volume when the mall was open, just through delivery or takeout or curbside pickup or all of these additional mechanisms. So restaurant tenants were a great example. And they were able to find ways to not compensate 100%, but at least go halfway and still do a good amount of business by adhering or developing some of those new services that customers were looking for at the time. So that was interesting. When you look at the sales data upon opening, you can see, especially there are 4 categories within Westfield which are doing really, really good. 3 of them I have a clear explanation for. The last one, still a question mark. But first thing that's still working really strongly is food. Anything around food, right? Grocery stores have never thrived this way. I think that more people are obviously staying home, cooking home, enjoying. Some of them have even learned new skills during the outbreak. So food and beverage works really well. The second one that's working really well, and it's funny, at the other end of the spectrum, is luxury goods and luxury products. I think that some people didn't want to, I don't know if they didn't want to buy them online, or they were just frustrated during that period, or have some disposable income to spend. Whatever the reason is, our luxury tenants are doing really strong at the moment. Third category is home. Home furniture, home improvement, home goods, small decor items. I think that everyone probably attending this call had some kind of home project during their stay, so it's materializing in stores upon opening. And it's interesting to see that most of these categories are still very physically driven and a little bit less online and e-commerce driven, although you have obviously some big players across 3 categories, but physical retail works really well for those 3. And the last one, it was the same exact category after the 2008 crisis, is shoes. Our shoe retailers are thriving. People are going. I've never been flip-flops that much of the time. For whatever reason, people are just out buying shoes. I think obviously kids have grown up over the last 3 months and probably need some new shoes. But our sneakers tenants are doing amazing, and for whatever reason, there's still a lot of excitement around these categories. So even though traffic is lower, what I was trying to describe here is that with no traffic, some tenants were still doing 50% of their sales, and with maybe traffic that's 30 or 40% down, we have people doing twice the amount of sales they did last year. So first answer to that is it's not the same answer across all categories, and some categories seem to be resisting a little bit more or emerging stronger after the crisis. I think the second answer to that is usually we used to think of the mall and probably as physical retail as people stepping in a store, buying stuff and leaving. But all the food delivery companies, all the ship from store options, all the curbside pickup delivery options that we've seen lately, also show that you don't always need, and some companies are an exception to that, but you don't always need people within your store to just generate sales out of your store, right? As long as the goods are getting to a customer, no matter what, no matter how, these tenants can still thrive and do their business. So from a mall operator standpoint, our job now is just to keep enhancing those logistical services and facilitating those multi-channel orders, giving them more space if they need to, consolidating shipping facilities within the mall for small tenants that want to ship their goods outside. If you walk to some of our stores today that are open, you'll see that maybe a quarter of the store has been closed and dedicated to preparing and fulfilling online orders. So they're using their stores as warehouses to just ship orders closer to customers. We've seen people taking phone calls and doing phone orders during the closure more than ever. So we were going high tech, touchless, AI powered, and everything that you want from a digital tool standpoint. But the phone has come back as just a very simple way, even texting as a very simple way of ordering your goods and getting them delivered. So I think that our job is just to help our tenants do that. An illustration of that, for instance, is curbside pickup has really picked up strongly during the closure because it was sometimes the only authorized way of selling merchandise in some states. So our tenants have started doing this, but some of them didn't have staff or didn't have infrastructure to manage it. So we've put our teams, our Westfield Center teams, at their disposal. We have now teams of runners that can go to the store, pick the merchandise, go to the curbside, deliver it to a customer, add a little gesture to that if needed. So we're trying to do part of the heavy lifting and help our tenants, especially the smaller ones, be able to accommodate with this new reality. Now, when our job has historically been to bring traffic to the mall, but we've done that obviously by partnering with the best brands across the country and across Europe. Now we have, and you were referring to, we are offering more than square footage. It's true that we're offering more than square footage because we have a huge palette of services, events, programming, digital tools that we are encouraging our tenants to use more and more. In Century City, it's a city down in Los Angeles, one of our best centers that you were referring to earlier. We have invested in a multi-million-dollar event space where you have customer-facing events where brands can also pop up or pop out of their stores and do product demonstrations. Everything is tracked digitally. We know who's participated to the event, so we're able to re-engage with those people. We have loyalty programs that we've launched across our properties as well to provide tenants with another tool to understand who's shopping their stores, but also target the most interesting shoppers or prospects that they might have. We have a range of media solutions ranging from static media to digital media to online media, which is very local and super targeted, that tenants can use and partners can use as well to help attain their objectives. So we obviously offer the store in a great location and a great setup, but we have developed over time a lot of solutions, and some of them digitally powered, to help do more.
All right.
First, the problem is that just to push back a bit on the delivery side, I think if you were imagining a delivery-only restaurant, you would never lease a high-end space inside of a Westfield mall for that, right? You would be throwing away most of the investment in the square footage. You know, so I mean, I think this is the thing about the recovery slope. Like, you know, it may be true that some percent of the GMV is coming back and there's these new use cases, but the traditional lease model and the kind of high-end build outs and all of the things that have gone into these properties can't be paid back by this type of business. You need people to come in and discover from scratch. Otherwise, you're sort of only attracting the most the customers that are least valuable, I would say.
Right. And maybe to build on that, you know, we've discussed that, you know, our lease is over was one of the questions that we were trying to answer last week when we prepared. Vibhu, like, what's your?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll say it, like, we're never signing another lease again with a landlord. So, and that's not me saying we're not going to expand. Like, we're going to expand a lot. but the lease model has been broken for 15 years, and I think at this point, I think most tenants are going to say no to long-term commitments with no guarantees on foot traffic or on production. We were talking about this a couple days ago. Like the idea of the lease was invented in a time when landlords had tremendous power over tenants, and tenants wanted to protect the long-term cost of the space. They didn't want the landlord to take advantage as their centers grew by raising rents every couple of years. So it made sense for a tenant to sign a long-term commitment to that space, and that kind of worked backwards all through the way that landlords finance their real estate investments. It's really, and I'd say like the challenge, I don't know have an answer for this, but I think without leases, a lot of these REITs are going to have a lot of trouble figuring out how to finance their centers. It doesn't, banks are not going to lend against a pop-up marketplace agreement necessarily, right? So, but from our standpoint, like we've already seen, I don't think I've ever seen an environment like this, and I've only been doing this for 5 years, to be fair. But the kind of creative things that landlords are talking about with us and with other tenants that I know couldn't have been imagined a couple of years ago. Tenants have a ton of power, and frankly, like if as much as the modern landlord, like a Westfield, has been reinventing their centers over the last couple of years and the last decade, adding more food, adding more entertainment, kind of migrating away from physical retail, they still understand they need shopping. You're not gonna, I don't think you're going to walk into a Westfield center that's 100% restaurants in the future, maybe, but probably not. And I think, to me, like we're not going to sign them. I don't think I'm the only one that's going to have that standpoint, that viewpoint. And I think even landlords they've seen this coming for a few years. Most of the landlords have a program for new tenants that looks something other than a lease, right? A lot of them have taken a retail as a service model, for example. They're doing an attribution-based or like a zip code kind of sales share model. They're doing anything other than a lease because the tenants are not going to accept it. They're not going to sign a 5 or 10 year agreement. It just doesn't make sense. So that's our radical viewpoint. I am certain that landlords have a different opinion, but they're going to have to change their minds pretty soon. There's just the appetite from retail just not going to be there.
Yeah. So maybe Joe, let me answer a couple of points because I agree with Vibhu on most of his points. I think first of all, you need people within stores, and it's not even a need. I think I would say that people just like to go to stores. So nobody's envisaging a model where you don't not need people or don't want people within a physical space. And that's why physical retail has been strong and has a strong future and a solid future. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen exactly the same way it has happened in the past. But to Vibhu's point, I think what is of most concern for tenants today is flexibility and having partners that understand that okay, they are committing to long-term commitments sometimes, that it weighs heavily sometimes on their P&L and their balance sheet, and that obviously against those investments they need some form of guarantee or visibility or reassurance that those investments will pay off, people will still be coming, and they will reach their objectives. So listen, from a landlord standpoint, I think Westfield has done this very extensively in the past years and will continue to do this. We've always invested in our spaces to make sure that they were the most safe, inviting, desirable environments. If you go to Valley Fair up in the valley, if you come to Century City, if you go down to San Diego and visit Westfield UTC, you'll see physically the representation of what we're trying to achieve as a vision. Places that look like neighborhoods, street shopping, open air most of the times, super convenient, super desirable and nice. Attention to design and detail has been utmost, and even the tenant lineup has been great because we've carefully selected and curated the best tenants to just create those exciting environments. And so people want to be there. People are a social species, and they just want to be together in nice places. So that's what we're trying to provide to them. And tenants want to be there as well. We've had some successes inviting direct-to-consumer brands and digital native brands into those centers. And we know that usually, and I'm saying just generally speaking, those brands prefer to go high street first when they start expanding to physical retail. But we've seen some great success. We've had Allbirds opening in UTC recently and down in San Diego, and that was a great achievement. And I can give you another dozens of examples like that. So Vibhu was saying that landlords were, the balance of power was a little bit different a couple of years ago. I think it's true. We were in a very fast expansion phase of retail, and space was scarcer, and retailers, tenants were fighting for the best locations. I think those long-term deals were built maybe to protect retailers on the rent side, but also to give them the opportunity to choose a space and keep that space. We know that having a specific space within a mall is super important. You might be exposed to the right demographics, you might be closer to a brand that you like. So having a long-term lease was not only servicing us, but also servicing brands in a way. So going long-term, physical retail is needed, brands will want it, people will want to go to physical spaces and enjoy their time. But fully agree with Vibhu. I think there needs to be a deeper conversation around flexibility, or at least the terms of those leases, which probably have been a little bit too strict over time. And listen, this crisis has opened a great opportunity for conversation. Vibhu was mentioning some leases that are including performance, or that say are sales based. It's things that we do. With our direct-to-consumer digital native brands, we also are including, and that's the case in Ghadi Fair in our digital district, data sharing and revenue sharing on online orders in the areas, because we know that a store is also producing some additional value or incremental value on online sales. So we've been entering those discussions with our tenants. I'm not the best positioned person to discuss about that in my company, but I know that we're following that lead. So I guess that those points of view will meet at some point.
On the demographic, we had a couple of questions on how Gen Z are influencing, how the new retail format is looking, how physical retail is looking. Is our digital and live plus and the live streamings that you've been doing, Vibhu, for example, and physical retail start to really be one? How do you see them really integrating with new generations?
I think if you wanted to be very precise about the problem that a lot of, for example, department stores are having, is that they have not been able to bring a young shopper into their stores. And, largely the people that shopped at some of these stores 20 years ago are the same people who are still shopping there. They didn't lose those customers to online, but every single young person between the age of 15, back, I'm not that old, but even when I was growing up, like when I was a teenager, I would hang out at the mall. That was the spot to go, grab a smoothie and check out like in a game store, but that kind of thing is not happening anymore. Young people are not hanging out in the mall. They're hanging out on Instagram. They're hanging out on, iMessage. And I think bringing those shoppers into a mall or into a store is hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of new modes of interaction. For us and our mission, like we know and that if you have products that are interesting to younger people, then they come in to see those. That has been the case for us for many, many years. And oftentimes when you walk into a beta store, you are seeing the stuff that you just saw an Instagram ad for. Usually coincidentally, but maybe in the future that'll be more sort of intentional. But we have the stuff that young people are interested in, and I think our approach on live streaming and digging on Instagram and potentially other platforms is really just reaching people where they are. We measure the demographics of our customers very precisely. So we have a camera provided by Retail Next at every door. It's a high def camera that does machine vision demographic analysis for both age and gender. And the vast majority of our customers are between 25 and 45, which is a pretty wide range, but most, let you in a secret, like most people who shop in malls are not in that age group, actually. So, and it depends on the center. It depends on the center, to be fair. But it's happening more, I think the initiatives that you were just talking about around bringing in direct-to-consumer brands, newer brands, is about shifting the demographics of the mall. But yes, there are shoppers for Allbirds that are 45 plus, but their primary demographic is right in that kind of range that I just mentioned, right? So if you have the right brands, you have the right products, young people do come in. The reality though is you walk into most shopping centers and 90% of the brands that you see there are the same ones that were there a long time ago. And that shift is, part of it's the leases, right? It's hard to, it took, how many years after JCPenney's had already been forgotten did it take for them to go out of business? Like, it takes a long time for these things to be unwound. And, it is, I think the next couple of years, you're going to see just massive disruption in the tenant base. And that should, I think that will shift the demographics of centers and pretty substantially. We'll see. Disagree with something I said.
Maybe let's spend the next 3 minutes. We have 6 minutes left, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. But something we talked about, Ghadi, is during a post-earnings conference last year, Simon Mall CEO, David Simon, said that we could see them buying brands, and that led to the purchase of Forever 21. Could you share what you think that means for the mall business model, and what's your deeper thought around brands and mall partnerships or such partnerships?
Yeah, sure. So listen, I think one thing is true. You have to keep your mix and your mix of tenants and the brands at your centers as fresh as possible and as relevant as possible. So not only bringing the new or latest or hottest fashion apparel brands or beauty brands, also diversifying your mix into food, into entertainment and other type of uses. We've seen a huge surge in health, in well-being, in micro-fitness, and all of these tenants are now part of our best malls. It's funny to see that in Center City or even UTC, or that's the case in Valley Fair, 55% of our customers are 37 years old or younger, which means that we have a majority of these customers that are in the younger age group, and some research has seen that even Gen Z is more likely than any other age group to shop at malls. Now, some brands and some tenants are doing better than others. Some malls are obviously doing better than others, but when you have the right product, you're there, and the numbers show that. Now, partnering with brands in the future, I don't know what David Simon's motivation was. Was he maybe trying to protect a huge source of rent of the brands that he purchased, because he probably is the largest landlord of the couple of brands he's bought out? Our view is a little bit different. I think that what we're trying to say is we have some capital money. In the past, we've put it, we've granted it in some deals to help our tenants build out their spaces and start operating. But we could use that capital a little bit differently. We could be partnering or identifying which are the 10 or 20 next hot brands that are willing to expand and that are ready for the next step of their physical development or their offline development. And we'd love to be partnering with those brands, and Beta is obviously one of them, to be able to welcome them in our mall, bring some funding that help them expand, discuss terms that make sense with those brands, and try to refresh and keep our portfolios as relevant as possible.
Have you thought about the, if you look at software, there's just been in the last decade, you've seen a lot of the platform providers become content producers as well, and Netflix obviously went from a channel to owning and producing their own exclusive content. Everyone is doing that. You see Spotify doing that right now with podcasts. Have you guys discussed the idea of having exclusive retailers that are only available within the Westfield portfolio, or do you guys not think of yourselves as a brand in that way?
Listen, we've done it. In that business, exclusivity clauses and exist, and there are some tenants that with whom we have those clauses, and some of our competitors do as well. But listen, if we're in a mindset where we want to partner with brands long term and even potentially invest some money in to be successful, those brands will need to expand outside of our portfolio as well. So I don't think that it's making them a service to be in such a mindset.
Yep. Fair enough.
Well, Vibhu, has your business model of Beta evolving a little bit out of this out of these changes, these physical changes?
Well, that's, you know, that it is. But yeah, we've been not public yet about all the changes that we're making. I mean, the reality is that everything I just said about the relationship between us and our landlords is also true for the brands that we work with,
Yeah.
right? We have a model that's super comparable to a mall. We have, 120 brands that are all slicing up a small space and paying their share of that. That's essentially a mall model. And they, brands are also looking for more protection on the downside right now. And so absolutely, we've made extremely dramatic adjustments to our business model. And I'm really, really excited about it because I think you're going to like the store, the beta store that you walk into in December is going to be really different from the beta store of last year. It's going to be super high quality, but the experience is going to be different and the product assortment is going to be different. And I can't wait for people to see it. And if you look in between, you'll see how our business model has shifted as well.
Right. Cool. Thank you. Well, I think we're getting to the end, and I want to thank you both, Vibhu and Ghadi, for being super open in answering these questions that I think are not easy discussion for both a listed company and companies within physical space. But I really appreciate you being here, and want to thank Maddie and Ravi for helping organize organize all this.
Appreciate the invite.
And thank you, Joseph, and panelists Vibhu and Ghadi for really this provocative conversation on a kind of a tough topic, which is kind of what is physical retail going to look like. Thank you all for joining today. Thank you, Maddie, for making this happen.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for all the questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but I see a few people that I know, so I'll try to answer some of them and direct a few of the questions over.
Thank you, everyone. And a reminder to go ahead and check out our YouTube channel tomorrow for this session. And I'm also going to drop the event survey again. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. This was such a good conversation. And I think you can tell the audience really enjoyed it too, because we had so many great questions. So thanks everyone for joining, and thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks, Joe. I'm just sending this out to the group. Okay.